Hello there, and thank you for joining us for this important discussion on the American Rescue Plan Act, a $1.9 trillion coronavirus relief bill. The bill includes nearly $170 billion in supplemental funding for the United States Department of Education and additional funding for certain education programs in other federal agencies, such as the Child Care Development Block Grant and Head Start. My name is Josh Kramer, and I have the opportunity to serve as the Executive Vice President at the National Center for Families Learning, or just simply NCFL. Today, I'm also joined by our expert policy advisor, Kuna Tavlin, and together we'll be discussing the impact of the American Rescue Plan Act, how schools and family literacy program sites can take advantage of these funds, and how NCFL is here to help. Kuna, let's get started with you. Obviously, there's a lot in this bill, so we're going to break it down and try to make its contents as clear as possible. It would be great if you could start us off by providing some context regarding the thinking behind the bill and break down which funding is eligible to family literacy and family engagement practitioners.
Great, thank you so much, Josh. So the American Rescue Plan Act is the most recent aid package to date and the most sweeping as it relates to education. It targets $130 billion in K-12 education funding, almost $40 billion for institutions of higher education, $100 million for education research, and $7.2 billion for a new E-rate program for connectivity. It also provides $362 billion for states, localities, tribal governments, et cetera, which is intended to shore up budgets that are impacted by revenue loss. And as you might know, a large portion of state and local budgets are also directed to public education. The enormity of the COVID-related supplemental education investment by the federal government deserves a moment of attention. The CARES Act, as you'll remember, provided approximately $31 billion for education. The Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, which was enacted in December, provided an additional $82 billion. And the American Rescue Plan Act provides an additional total of $168 billion. So together, those three bills add up to about $281 billion. That's more than 3 times the annual federal education budget. Thus far, only the CARES Act dollars, which is the smallest tranche of funding, have been obligated. The rest are still in flux. The $130 billion targeted to K-12 education through the American Rescue Plan Act is distributed through a Title I formula, so that it targets students living in poverty. But the funding itself is not tied to the Title I requirements. The funds can be used for any activity authorized under the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the Carl D. Perkins Act, the McKinney-Vento Act, and the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, which includes the Adult Education and Family Literacy Act. The funding is designed to address learning loss through supplemental instructional time, such as extended school day or school year, after school and summer learning. And this is one of the few areas that is required. States must set aside 5% of their funds and districts must set aside 20% specifically to address learning loss. The funds are also designed to meet the needs of students and teachers, including through professional learning, to implement evidence-based activities to meet the comprehensive needs of low-income students, students with disabilities, English learners, migrant students, students experiencing homelessness, and children in foster care, address the social, emotional, and mental health needs of students, and conduct school repairs and retrofitting, and much more. The funds must be spent down by the end of fiscal year 2023. So states, districts, and schools will most likely be looking for investments that will not be negatively impacted by that funding cliff. In other words, short-term investments.
Thanks, Kuna, for the background. As Kuna mentioned, the American Rescue Plan Act pumps $130 billion through the Title I formula to state education agencies, or SEAs, so that they can invest in efforts proposed by local education associations, or LEAs, to provide emergency educational funding in light of the current pandemic. And now more than ever, it is time to leverage a significant amount of these funds to expand family literacy and high-impact family engagement programming. Families have literally been learning in the home for a year in many cases. Moving forward, we now know families are a cornerstone of our country's education infrastructure. We also know the benefits of family engagement are even more important for low-income communities of color, making the commitment of funds for families an urgent equity issue. The literacy needs of adults and families, one of the largest indicators of student academic success, are now front and center in terms of supporting their children's education. How these stimulus funds are spent to support education with the home in mind will depend on the vision of SEAs and LEAs to identify family literacy and high-impact family engagement as priorities. Some teachers struggled with family engagement before. The recent pandemic has made this need even more acute. The Elementary and Secondary Education Act, as amended by the Every Student Succeeds Act, already allows family literacy, requires some family engagement, and encourages a lot more through the law. In some specific cases that overlap with the flexibility provided by the American Rescue Plan Act, there is called out support for family literacy and high impact family engagement. For example, in Title I, there's specific mention of family engagement in some Part A. Family literacy for low literacy populations is mentioned throughout Title I, and there's another specific mention of family literacy under Subpart C, migrant education. Also in Title III, which serves the needs of English language learners, you can find family literacy as an allowable expense and an effective practice. Similarly, in Title IV, which is known as 21st Century Education, which houses out-of-school time efforts and also things like the Statewide Family Engagement Center, family literacy is called out and family engagement is called out as an effective strategy. And then finally, Title X of the ESSA Act includes the McKinney-Vento Homeless Education Act, again, specific mention of family literacy and family engagement. Outside of ESSA, another key trigger for family literacy implementation, as Kuna mentioned, is the Workforce Investment and Opportunities Act, or WIOA, which includes the Adult Education and Family Literacy Act. Stimulus funds can be applied here as well. It is not just about funding in this moment, it is actually about our collective vision to bring adults and children together to learn by breaking down silos between adult and child education. Now, the federal definition of family literacy in ESSA and WIOA includes 4 components: adult education, parent time, child education, and parent and child together time, or PAC time. These 4 components were developed by NCFL and have been implemented by our team and partners across the country for 32 years. During that time, we have amassed mountains of evidence on the effectiveness of family literacy and family engagement in improving educational and life outcomes for adults and children. The novel coronavirus has forced us to look at the fact that families are the building blocks of our nation, and they need our support now more than ever. We need to leverage this stimulus package to make a difference for children and families. In other words, now is the time for school and community-based organizations to make connections that result in family literacy and high-impact family engagement programs. NCFL has been working to further this vision for 32 years. We hope that based on observing this webinar that you'll contact us to see how we can help you expand your vision for families and embark on this education journey together. In the meantime, please check out our free resources at www.familieslearning.org. One of those resources is our highly popular family learning website called wonderopolis.org. These are free resources you could use today around family engagement. We would also love to talk about custom professional development or any other efforts to help you learn how to leverage these stimulus funds for children and families in our country. Thank you and have a great day.